Hi, I'm Don Wood. I am a master gardener, but I'm also a woodworker and tool aficionado. I owned a bicycle store for 25 years, and so I became enamored with tools at an early age. And then to be a woodworker, sharp makes a huge difference in how productive you can be. So I learned to sharpen in the last 20 years. And in a garden, sharp can make a huge difference as well. So we're going to start with this tool because everybody knows what they use this in the garden for. Any idea why you'd want this to be sharp?
So you can...
Tree roots?
Yeah, so you can cut through stuff. So you can dig. So what is sharp? That's probably the first thing to define. What do you think of as sharp? If somebody said, what's sharp? How would you describe it?
Well, I'm a chef, so a very fine, delicate edge usually, but I don't imagine that's what I want in my garden.
It doesn't have to be delicate. So sharp is the intersection of two planes. So a true sharp edge is two planes that come together. So you can cut yourself just as badly with a square piece of steel that's got a sharp edge as you can with your chef knife. The difference is a square piece of steel is going to hold an edge a lot longer than your chef knife. The difference is it's going to require more energy to push through whatever you're trying to cut. So it'll still cut easily along that edge, but if you're trying to push a square edge through something that's solid, it's going to resist it. It'll cleave a nice, sharp, clean cut and just squish the middle if you have a big square. If you have a delicate edge, then it'll push it aside. So depending on what you're cutting and how you're cutting, you sharpen the edges differently. So on a shovel, you don't actually sharpen it to a point. You sharpen it across. So to sharpen a shovel or most mild steel, which is what most garden tools are, this is the good starting point. This is a mill file.
Where do you get that?
You can get this at pretty much any hardware store.
Okay.
This is a little teeny tiny one because I wanted to carry it. If I were actually sharpening my shovels at home, I have a 2-foot long one that I use because I can get a longer stroke and sharpen quicker. But instead of trying to do this and put a delicate edge on this, what we're actually going to do is try and go square to this edge and make a square piece of steel. This is a lot easier to do if you have a vise or something to hold this in place. This actually works. Use the old meat vise.
So Don, you mentioned something before the class that other shovel head was forged steel.
Yep.
And that's a what kind of steel? Medium?
This is a stamped mild steel.
Mild. So how does one go about swapping heads?
To change the head on this, you would drill out this rivet.
Drill it out, okay.
Or grind it off so you can punch it out.
Ah.
But you got to get the head off of one side or the other.
Okay.
So this one you can see was hammered here. So this is the end that was the rivet, and this is the end that's been riveted on, done with a hammer. So you could probably take a grinder and grind that smooth so you could punch that rivet out.
Okay.
And then you'll be able to drive this handle out of this.
Oh.
And how do you tell the difference between forged and stamped?
Well, the reason I could tell that this one was forged is because I learned this really cool thing in school called reading.
Ah, so it says on it. Okay.
It says on it.
Fair enough.
Well, I'm not a metallurgist who can look at the steel and go, oh, that's. I just read it.
So it usually tells you what
Yeah, and generally older stuff was made with better steel because people use stuff more. Honestly, modern tools have a tendency to be made. There's kind of like there's the stuff they make for consumers, and then there's the stuff they make for professionals. And unless you know where to shop for the stuff for professionals, you tend to get the stuff that's made for consumers, which is made to be used a few times and set aside because they assume people aren't actually going to use the stuff that they buy.
And they make more money if it's cheaply made, and then you have to buy a new one when you purchase.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's that as much as just our society is all about not sharpening and not fixing and just using until you don't like the way it works and throw it away and buy a new one. That's going to change. It's changing already. Younger society is figuring that disposable is not quite so good. But true in chef's knives as well. Real steel is an amazing difference. And then you have to decide. You have the schools of which is better steel, right? But so what you want here. I didn't really get this very sharp. But there's a little bit of an edge right here, just starting to form. And if you were to feel that in the garden, run your hand across there.
Ooh,
And now run your hand across that corner.
Oh yeah.
What do you feel the difference?
You can feel a square edge. You can,
Yeah. This one's more rounded and this one's square.
Right.
Flatter.
And so this edge, it's still not sharp. It still really needs to be filed to the point where there's actually a
A sharp
square.
corner.
But because this was so rounded,
You can see it. Okay.
yeah,
I can
you
see it.
can actually see the edge. When things go right, one side will reflect and one side won't. And so you can see the specific edge. And if you get a fuzziness between the two planes, then you know that you're still not sharp.
Okay. Thank you.
So that would be how you would sharpen hoes and shovels, digging spades, even digging forks.
Yes.
All right, so this digging fork is forged piece also, or maybe cast, I don't know. It's interesting.
Is it supposed to be bent like that?
I don't think so. I think somebody did that, but I'm not really sure. I've never seen one shaped like this, if that's the way it's supposed to be.
It was donated.
And then this is got triangular points on it, so it's tried to be a fork to get it so that it will dig in, it'll pierce better.
Couldn't that be one for hay?
No, this is not a hay fork.
Oh,
this is
okay.
definitely a digging fork.
Too
Could
small
you-
for hay.
Could you describe the uses of the two different forks?
Sure. So this is meant to break into soil that's hard and dig things out, break up soil, and also for actually digging and shoveling on soil that's too rocky to dig in with a spade. So this will go around the rocks and get you in farther. So really good for digging in Alaskan glacial moraine subsoil.
I use mine for punching holes in my sod when I'm digging up new garden beds, and then I get in there with my shovel and like cut it out basically.
You missed the earlier one. We don't do that. We don't.
Oh,
We build on top.
well,
Lasagna
I've
garden.
learned.
Oh, good. Yay.
So this is actually a manure fork, and then a hay fork would look like this, but would have half as many tines. Okay, and the reason you can use this for hay, but hay's because there's so many tines on it, it's not gonna want to release when you throw, and so you're gonna have to scrape it off and pull it off.
It's fabulous for wood chips.
Which is essentially
Yeah.
what manure is.
Yeah.
So small chunky stuff that wants to fall through, that you can't get a shovel in very well. So, but that's not fibrous enough to wrap around this is the perfect thing. So yeah, for digging wood chips, look at that. It'll pick up a whole herd of wood chips quickly. And the reason I knew the other one was a digging fork and not a hay fork was because of the handle. Digging forks have D handles, and pitchforks have long handles, so you can chuck stuff. And generally, those pitchforks don't have to be sharpened because they're just going into fibrous materials that are already broken up, and you don't actually want to pierce stuff. So you wouldn't, for digging in manure or wood chips, you wouldn't want something that's sticking into those objects because then they won't come off, right? You want it to slide between them. Everybody in Alaska has one of these. Most of them won't, are pretty much blunt. They're probably funny shaped hammers is really what most of them are. This is my really rough, this is what I use for chopping out roots and stuff that I'm going to be chopping into possible rocks or dirt. And so the edge on this is pretty mediocre. I couldn't actually shave with this one all day long, and it'll cut, but it's not going. I mean, it cuts through wood just fine, but it's not going to cut. There's no polish. So that actually is sharpened with
Ooh,
the
you can
file.
feel that.
It's sharp.
Oh yeah. Woo.
This one, on the other hand, I could shave with.
Ooh, yeah. Meh.
Whoa, I'm just gonna get it close up.
So this is a carving axe that I have that I keep in good shape for whittling and carving.
Thank you.
Both these axes are forged steel.
She could use that in the kitchen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Watermelon.
This
You'd
will
chop the
this will
counter
do
up.
surgery with just fine. And it's
Whole chicken wouldn't stand a chance.
yep.
Everything with a butter knife.
So this knife, this axe was sharpened here. If you guys all want to come around, you can see I'm actually raising. You can actually see the little edge that I'm starting to raise here. Even with just that little bit of work.
Little bird.
Right, I'm creating a little burr.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm going to go to the other side. And push it back over.
Kind of doing an X, aren't you?
So I'm trying to fit the angle of the point. Okay?
Oh.
So I can bring, again, my goal is to bring to make where they connect as close to two parallel surfaces, two flat planes. They can be curved flat planes, but they're still flat planes where they intersect because that's the sharpest edge. So generally with a file, my two flat planes are going to have ribs in them, right? So they're going to be this. They're going to be rigid, or like almost like a bread knife. If you were to look at this under magnification, you would see that the edges is very this. With this axe, I have polished it with finer and finer grit tools. So I use I like diamond paddles because this pack of diamond paddles is like $15, and it does all the garden tools really easily.
Can I get a close up of that?
Yeah.
Where do I get it? Ooh. Okay.
And so this is from AIH, so they're easily available. And they have medium, fine, and super fine. And so you start with the coarsest, work towards the finest. With this, I only go to medium, just good enough, because again, I know I'm going to hit into dirt and stuff and abuse this edge. This edge, I want it to be as sharp as possible because my goal is to whittle spoons with this. I thought I brought a straw, but I don't think I did. So from super fine, I'll actually on this edge take it down one more level with a piece of hardwood with some polishing compound on it. And that'll take it all the way to the point where without an electron microscope you can't see the serrations on this edge. And that would be now. So the other difference is this axe I bought at the hardware store. It's a forged head, so it was an expensive locally available hatchet. It was like $25. This hatchet I ordered. It took 8 months to get because the manufacturer is a young man in England who made this for me. I paid him 375 pounds for this, about $500 for this handmade piece of equipment. And it's art. It's not just a functional tool, but it's an amazingly functional tool because as long as I keep this, as long as I don't abuse it, really all I ever sharpen this with is the strop or the hard piece of hardwood with the polishing compound on it, just to keep it shiny, basically. Once you've got stuff to a mere polish, it's amazing how durable a good forged edge is. These are Whittling knives. And these are fairly inexpensive, but it's a really good way to see the difference. So I hollow grind these, which means that I grind them on a wheel, and that puts a dish in the flat surface. And then when I put the polishing, I can put it between those two edges of that dish. It makes it really easy to find that edge, so you can see the polished edge.
Do we have chef's approval?
Oh yes.
I don't know. Yeah, you should be able to see that.
Oh yeah. Wow, that's really pretty.
Oh wow.
And so this edge is, I've been working with this knife for probably 10 days of whittling, so it's getting some nicks. That's one of the reasons I brought it, was I know it's ready to be polished up again. And if you run your hand, you always want to make sure if you're feeling an edge that you're running away from the edge with your skin. But I can feel a few burrs on this as I'm going across. And so that's another way I know. I know because when I'm cutting with it, it's leaving tracks in the wood. And so this is rough and or in bad enough shape that I will need to start probably with the fine diamond.
So when it's in rough shape, you start with the fine?
Well, because again, it's rough shape for a really sharp knife.
Okay, gotcha.
So this knife is probably sharper than 90% of the knives that any of you have.
In our kitchen, except for her.
Yeah, except for the chef, right? So this, one way you can tell sharp is if you set this on here, if you have a dull edge, this will skate across your fingernail because your nail's hard enough that it won't bite in. But because this edge is sharp, you should try that. So you just set it on your nail and try and slide it, and you'll feel the edge bite.
Oh yeah, you can already.
Yeah. So that's.
Yeah.
So this knife is still sharp, most spots, but it's got nicks in it from use.
Oh yeah.
See, it doesn't want to slide on me. I can try and force it, and it won't slide. If it were dull, it would skate across my nail. You already know that.
I'm good. Yeah.
And so, again, to polish this up, I would start, because I know there's some nicks in it, I'll start with the fine diamond. Because I have a hollow grind in it, I can literally just push that against that hollow grind, and it's going to hit at the two high spots. Does that make sense? So there's a dish in it. If I set a square edge on it, it's going to hit the top and bottom. And what that allows me to do is hold that exactly on the edge that I need. And because this is diamond, I don't have a direction. You notice when I was sharpening with the file, I had to go, because file's only cut in one direction, and if I pull it back across the metal, it actually dulls the file. But with the diamond, because it's abrasive on all sides, it'll work in both directions. So are you a diamond sharpener or a Waterstone sharpener?
I learned on an oil stone or a water stone.
Okay, yeah.
But my boyfriend uses a water stone. He's a chef too. So yeah, that's the way we've always sharpened our knives. But
So
when
I
you're
like
working-
water stones. They cut really fast, but they're really hard to keep flat. So they're a lot of extra work. And as a woodworker, and I taught woodworking, so I was constantly sharpening my students' tools. The diamonds don't get out of flat. They're not as fine, so I actually have 2 fine ceramic water stones that I use after my finest diamond stone on my tools at home, because again, I'm going for as high a polish as I can get. But for gardening tools, it's way more sharp than you need, because again, you're in the garden, so you've got particles of dirt everywhere, hopefully. So now I've pulled this a couple times just on one side, and I can actually feel a really small burr on this side. But I've done both sides, so I've just rolled the burr over and go to super fine. And the label is all relative. This is the finest, this inexpensive set of. So this super fine is actually the same as my medium of my good diamond stones that I have on my tool bench, workbench, for sharpening my. So I have two finer grains of diamond. In fact, the finest diamond stone I have looks like a piece of steel. It's hilarious. You look at it, you're like, I have to actually look at. It's got a label on it that says which side has the diamonds on it, because you can't physically see them. But it cuts, so it's really fascinating. Now I have no burr, and that little nick that was right here in the middle is gone. And it didn't take very much, because once you keep it sharp. But that's really the trick with sharp, is starting with sharp, staying sharp. If you what we say in woodworking is, if you think it needs to be sharpened, it's late. You're in trouble. You're ready for work now. All right, so garden tool, pruners, bypass pruners, really handy tool, right?
Yes.
So you look at it, and the way this tool works is it's flat on one side, just like scissors. It's got an anvil on this side, so again, there's a square edge here, and that's so that you can put power against your branch. And then you've got a fairly shallow edge on this side, but then in addition, you've got a more steep angle, and that's to build a stronger edge right where the cutting is. So on this tool, the knife that I showed you, it was 2 planes that came in like this. On this tool, you've got a vertical edge. The overall knife edge is shaped like this, but then at the end, there's a sharper, steeper. And what that does is increase the thickness of the edge, and so make it less likely to wear out, right? Slower to wear out. If you go to the printing place, they can cut through pieces of paper or stacks of paper this thick with this guillotine. If you look at it, it's a square edge. It's 2 square edges that shear like this, and it makes a perfectly clean cut. But they've got the power of hydraulics to move through that thick. Our finger's not quite that strong, so that's the trade-off. All right, so to sharpen this, again, I've got this in pretty good shape, so I don't need a file. If I were going to take a file to this, I would actually take it apart, because I can't get in here with the file. So this is the anvil's in the way. And so the sharp edge is this one. And when you're sharpening garden tools, it's really much easier to find the angle, because they'll be dirty or rusty. So as soon as you start cutting, you'll see exactly where you're cutting. And so you want to just get to the edge, and you want to try and hold it at an exact angle, because again, our goal here is to get as close to a perfect shear, perfect plane. Let's see how it's polished up.
Oh yeah.
That edge. You can see the polish on that edge, and that's, again, this is with the medium stone, so it's still not polished. But I got to the point where I'm raising a burr on this edge on the back side.
Oh yeah. And that's the.
So if you run your finger there, you can kind of feel the burr, but not much.
Yeah.
So then I'm going to go to the back flat surface and take that burr off. You're going to be tempted to tip the tool to take that edge up quicker. Don't do that, because a lot of the way these shearing tools work is by this space and this space interacting. So they're making an anvil and they're shearing across there. But if you tip that in to get the sharp edge there, you're making a gap, and so wood's going to force itself in there and spread those apart. And that's when, if you ever used a tool that felt sharp, but you go to cut it and it pinches the wood rather than cutting it, that's because the back edge, there's too much of a gap between the anvil side and the sharp side. And then same thing on the anvil side, we want to sharpen that up as much as we can. And you can actually feel that edge as well.
Oh yeah.
So there's a very square, sharp edge right there.
Oh yeah. So.
Yeah, and if you were actually to run your finger this way, you could slice your finger when this is sharp.
Nobody ever sharpens their.
Pruners.
Yeah.
What if they get rusty? What would you recommend?
Same thing.
They
I mean, you should oil them to keep them from getting rusty,
Okay.
but to
Any
sharpen
food
them,
grade oil?
yeah, any kind of oil, whatever you've got. I use I actually use old motor oil for this because I
Okay.
still have cars with motors, but not much longer. Then I'll have to buy oil. Oh my God, how awesome will that be?
Yes, very awesome.
But yeah, food grade oil would work fine.
Okay. I've got a machete that's rusted as all get out.
So to get rid of rust, the first thing to do is buy a wire wheel and stick it to an electric drill, and that'll braid off most of the rust on your garden tools. You want to stop that if you can, because it will eat away your garden tools.
It's like a rotor on your brake when they shave down.
Yep.
Got it.
So, and the more you don't need to get it to a polish. So I hit this with rust. It's still rusted. That's what the dark patina is actually rust. And if I were to see when I hit that with the, yeah, you see the actual rust color when I raised that up from hitting it with the abrasive here. So I'm actually a little rusty, and then I've oiled it to.
Can I see your tool?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. That's amazing.
It's the same thing here. If you hit the back edge of this, you can see how it's, and on the tool it's rusty colored. So the dark patina is actually rust.
Oh wow. Okay. That's all.
Right, so the whole surface of this, I mean, these used to be shiny silver, right, when I got them.
Yeah.
But this tool is 20 years old or 15 years old, somewhere in there. So, and Carrie was just struggling to cut these branches with her great big bypass pruners.
Yes. How it should be.
Wow.
The joy of having sharp clippers.
Yay!
And these are not my sharp ones. These are my rough ones that I use for.
I'm going to stop videotaping because it's 30 minutes, but my phone is about to die. So I'm going to stop videotaping. I just want to thank you And I'm so glad that you are volunteering, coming out so every week so far, teaching, and hope to have you a whole bunch more. Thanks again.